Welcome to Capitol Preview, a weekly bipartisan discussion with Iowa legislators about the key issues facing our state. Brought to you by Mediacom.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Capitol Preview, a show where we talk to our representatives and our senators that are doing our work for us up at the state capitol. My name is Bill Peard. I'm the Executive Vice President and Telecommunications Association. Our guest this morning is Representative Chip Baltimore, Republican from Boone. Representative, it's good to see you here this morning.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We this show kind of is just more of a conversation than it is, a red meat type interview. So we'll get a chance to see what makes Chip Baltimore tick and what he's interested in and what he is not interested in. So. One of the first questions I'd like to ask you are, what are the prospects for tax reform?
Well, I think they're very good this year. Obviously, the governor laid that out as one of her top priorities early in the session. I know there were a lot of people working on it over the interim between last session and this session. And we've got a great opportunity to do something positive for Iowans when it comes to income tax reform here in the state. Fortunately, the federal government, Congress and President Trump passed the federal tax reform that's going to create a windfall for the state of Iowa in terms of higher income taxes to be paid by Iowans. So that's a burden that we'd like to reduce a little bit and make sure that it's not quite so onerous on Iowans and they get the full benefit of the federal tax reform.
With recent budget problems, why should we do tax reform now? I think a lot of people ask that question.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we have had a couple of years of challenges, mainly when revenues did not come in as they were projected by the Legislative Services Agency, or not the Revenue Estimating Conference. We're required to take their numbers and use those as our budget numbers, and when revenues don't come in, then that gets to be a problem. We've had to de-appropriate the last couple of years in the middle of a year, try to just make sure that the budget fits with the revenues that we receive. The reason to do tax reform now are a couple of reasons. First of all, the federal tax reform did create a windfall situation. And because we have federal deductibility in this state, Iowans' individual and business tax state income taxes are going to go up dramatically, simply because they're going to get a reduced federal tax bill. So, now's the time for us to take a look at that and try to do something, since we have this additional revenue that's going to be coming in. Second of all, we're still hearing issues in terms of economic growth and business development in this state about how high our state income tax is. The top rate's 8.98%. That's way out of line with a lot of other states, virtually every other state. It's one of the highest in the country. And we really have been trying to find a way to do something about that over the last several years, and it's imperative that we continue to do that. Then the third thing I think is that part of the tax reforms discussion is modernizing our state sales tax. We are leaking oil in terms of revenue with online sales. People go on the internet, they buy things from other states, and if those companies that they're buying from don't have a physical presence here in the state, then they don't collect and remit sales tax. And with the proliferation of online shopping these days, that's just a situation that we're just losing state sales tax revenue all day long. So part of this is modernizing that, trying to get everyone in line so that sales tax is collected on everything that should be taxed. So it doesn't make any difference whether you buy it online or whether you buy it here in the state. That's something that we're looking to try to accomplish.
And we're kind of chasing our tail a little bit too, right? Because these standalone buildings are kind of going by the wayside. Some of them are.
They are.
Because they're going on the internet.
Absolutely.
We're not capturing it there.
It's absolutely harder and harder, and more businesses are going online. And so, again, this is an effort to modernize it, bring everything on par, level the playing field so that everybody's operating from the same set of premises and trying to make that work.
Yeah, well, good luck, because that's our future, right?
Well,
it's right on
certainly looking like
right, it. Right, exactly. We're going to change topics here a little bit. What can or should be done about gun violence in our schools?
Sure. That's a really popular topic right now, and it's a tragic one because we see this happening more and more often. And some of the reaction is, well, if you ban this kind of weapon or ban this thing or ban weapons altogether, that will fix it. I think that the data shows that it won't. We need to dig deeper into what are the actual causes of these typically young people that decide that they're going to go off and commit these horrible crimes on their fellow students or on the young people in schools. And schools are for whatever reason have become just a ripe target for these people, mainly because you've got a lot of people in a very confined place, and for whatever reason, that's how they decide that they want to act out. So we need to dig deeper into what are the causes of that. I'm very happy with some of the efforts we've done this year at the Capitol in terms of anti-bullying efforts. I think a lot of times that starts kind of the process of the mentality of, hey, I think I need to rectify whatever I've got going on by going out and killing a lot of people. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we can do, is to really start trying to have these discussions with our young people, identify what those children and those people that are having problems, that are struggling in our society, and try to get them help sooner, get some intervention in place so that we can help them so they don't get to the point where they feel like they need to act out in that horrible manner.
I have two boys, college-age boys that we did a good job. My wife did a good job in raising those, but the pressure that is put on teenagers,
Absolutely.
in today's society is much greater than it was when we were teenagers.
Absolutely. And we all had peer pressure when we were growing up.
Right.
I think that's kind of a natural thing.
Right.
Social media makes it exponentially worse,
Yes.
in my opinion.
Yep.
And honestly, I think it needs to start from everyone, from elected officials all the way down through the adults and parents that are out there on social media to the kids. We need to be more careful about what we say. I think we need to be more careful about to whom we say it. I've seen some things on social media that are being said by adults, and I look at that and I think, this is the example that we're giving to our children, and that's what the environment that they're being raised in. And I think it's important for us to take a look at that and say, you know what, maybe that's not a good example of how we should interact with each other. Let's get out from behind the anonymity or safeguards of social media, where we can feel like we can say whatever we want, and let's start interacting with each other for a change, one-on-one, where you can actually have a conversation without just making it that much worse.
Well said. I mean, and that it's as simple as that, I think. Representative, why did you vote against the SAVE bill? And you might tell our viewers what the SAVE bill was.
The SAVE bill, the SAVE penny, is a 1 cent sales tax here in the state that is dedicated solely for school facilities and infrastructure. And it was brought into place quite a while ago. It was set to expire in 2029. This is a source of revenue that school districts bond against to build school buildings, primarily. I am not opposed to the concept of a 1 cent sales tax for school infrastructure. And what the bill that we voted on this year would have extended the time period from 2029 out to 2049, so another 20 years to generate that bond revenue for the school facilities. My biggest problem with the bill is that I don't think it did enough to help the financially neediest schools in the state. With all due respect, the fastest growing communities in Iowa, the Waukees, the Ankenees, the West Des Moines, and some of the other urban areas, they have a very, very large, wealthy property tax base that they can spread the cost of a new school out much, much cheaper than rural school districts can do. It is very challenging in rural Iowa to build a new building of any size without a very dramatic, detrimental property tax levy that makes rural economic development and housing in rural Iowa even more problematic, especially when we've got declining enrollment. So they already have declining enrollment out in rural Iowa because we're having fewer children out there. And so In my opinion, this bill did not go far enough to help those schools that really don't have a large property tax base to spread the cost out over. If we could have changed the allocation formula to make it more need-based for the school districts rather than distributing most of it per pupil on a per pupil basis, I would have been supportive of that, but I thought it was imperative for someone to stand up and say, this is the reason why we're seeing more challenges out in rural Iowa when it comes to education. And I think every child in Iowa deserves to have quality facilities to go to school in, not just the ones that are in the fast-growing areas. So it was a symbolic no vote to make a point.
No, and I think I made it well. How much longer before the legislature is done for this year?
Not soon enough. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be between 2 to 3 weeks. Even when everything is agreed upon, it still takes roughly a couple of weeks to move the bills back and forth, have the debates on the floor of the House and also on the Senate, and move that back and forth. And there's some key issues left to be resolved. Obviously, tax reform is one of them, and I think we will do something on tax reform. I'm just not sure exactly how that's going to play out. I think that there's a number of other issues that are out there that people are interested in, and we'll see if they have enough traction or support to get brought up yet this year. If they are, then that's just going to drag it out a little bit longer. But I think we've got the bulk of the work done. Now it's just a matter of trying to get this final tax reform budget agreement put together, and then start moving the bills back and forth.
There's got to be some people that are nervous, though, that have primaries coming up that are primaried in their election.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and I respect that, but I think we have to remind ourselves why we're there.
Yeah.
We're there to govern. We're not there to run for re-election. Again, and when it's you're an incumbent and you're sitting in the chamber and you know that the primary's coming up the beginning of June. It's hard to continue to sit there, especially if we're kind of sitting around not doing a whole lot,
right.
At least visibly. It's hard to sit there and not go out and campaign, but again, we're there to govern, and so that's the most important thing that we need to take a look at.
Representative, we're coming up to the end, so I'm going to ask you one more. I think this is an important thing in our conversation we had this morning, but what won't get done this year, and what would you like to see done?
Yeah, from my perspective, I don't think that we did a good job on water quality. I think the House last year had a much better bill than what we actually passed, and the Senate stood firm and insisted upon what we did, and the House backed down on it, and the governor signed it. It was a one step in a 100-mile race, I think, in terms of actually trying to help advance the water quality efforts in this state. I'm obviously disappointed in our efforts on that. I know that people on both sides of that debate were well-intended. We have different views on how to get that solved, but I think that that's something that simply we did not go far enough, and we missed an opportunity.
Well, that's it for our time today. I appreciate your time being here, Representative Baltimore, and I appreciate very much your service that you've given to Iowa, because I know you're a hard worker, and we appreciate that.
Thank you very much. It truly has been an honor.
Thank you. Please tune in to another episode of Capitol Preview.